If you've recently lost a job, you've probably ridden the emotional roller coaster, shock, anger, or self doubt. That phase is valid and necessary. But what comes next? I'm Michelle McKenzie, career transition and executive coach and founder of Empowering Insights.
Welcome to the Transition Blueprint.
In the previous episode, I delved into strategies to manage the emotional grief and building emotional resilience with Lisa Kay's licensed social work counselor. If you are still in the emotional grief stage of a job loss, make sure you go back and watch that episode. However, today we're shifting from grief to game plan. Once the fog begins to lift from grieving the loss of a job, the question then becomes, what now? That's where planning begins, and my next guest comes in. Carl Edgecombe is a career coach and workforce planning specialist who's helped hundreds of people get their mojo back and rebound after job loss. Carl is a certified professional resume writer and career coach, a certified workforce development professional, and Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach with over 20 years of experience in career services and workforce development. His knowledge of employment trends, resume optimization, and career planning makes him a powerful ally in your job search. In this episode, we'll walk you through how to move from surviving to strategizing and building your next career chapter with intention. Carl, welcome to the Transition Blueprint.
And thank you, Michelle. It is a pleasure to join you on this podcast and be a part of the Transition Blueprint. This is very important work that you're doing at a time when hundreds of thousands of people are on the market looking to find their next places of employment. And many of them are wondering, are they going to have the security that they once had as far as their job search process, as far as finding employment, as far as finding a best fit position? It is a pleasure to be here, and hopefully the information that we pass on today will be used by many going through these transition phases.
All right, thank you so much for joining me. So let's get into it. Why is emotional processing after job loss essential, and when is it time to pivot to planning?
Losing a job, Michelle, is not that different from losing a friend or a family member, whether through death or just a natural separation. Somebody had to leave to go abroad for an extended period. Your child leaves and go away to college. All of these cause people to grieve in one way, shape, or form or another. And so we have to, first of all, understand and acknowledge that these emotions can be triggered. And when you're dealing with an emotional upheaval, is not the best time for anyone to be looking for employment. Okay, because it can hurt long term. You might find a position that seems right for you in the time because you're acting maybe out of some form of desperation or something like that. But I call these jobs knee-jerk reactions because you really want to take the time to deal with whatever is happening happening within you, because that could manifest even at a job interview. You could be sitting in the interview and the interview is going fine. This is something I saw happen with my own eyes. The interview is going just fine, and all of a sudden there's tears coming down your face, and you wonder, we're sitting there and we're looking at this person, and it's like, okay, what just happened? And all the sympathy that we can offer does not take away from, okay, this person has other things going on, because it's nothing to do with the questions we ask. It's nothing to do with the process that we're going through. So it has to be that person. And then the question becomes, is this somebody that we want to hire at this time? And so with that in mind, what I want to ask every single person who is in a career transition right now to think about is, Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes, you have the skills, your resume is up to date, all of these factors. But are you mentally ready to go back into the workplace? And so, what I say to job seekers, and these are among the two hardest words I've ever had to say to any job seeker in a transition situation, is be patient. You have to be patient. And patience is not because you are in need of anything but to heal. You have to give yourself time to heal. Give yourself time to be ready to go out there to overcome whatever it is that you lost. You want to overcome most of that. And it may never go away permanently, but are you able to manage and control it? So I want you to say to be patient. The next thing I want you to think
Carl,
about,
before you go to your next point, may I interject to say, have you ever gotten pushback on the patient's advice with people saying, well, my bills aren't patient, my expenses aren't patient. They keep coming. They come every month. They don't know what's going on. They don't have any respect for my situation currently. They don't care. They're coming.
and you
How can I be patient when my bills aren't patient?
and the other one is the landlord is not going to wait. Okay, so yes, I've had that kind of pushback, but the way I've responded to that is pretty much the same. Yes, I understand that the bills are not patient, but if you are going to take a job, be mindful of the fact that until you are mentally ready, you could end up being on the job hopping list because you're unsettled on the inside and it's going to be reflected on the outside. You're likely to offend when you don't really intend to because you're acting irrationally sometimes because of these emotions. And so it's better sometimes to endure some hardship, make some deals, talk to your landlord, see if they'll give you some extra time, give you some waiting time. I mean, they're holding an extra check for you somewhere anyway. You know, talk to your banker. Sometimes in situations like this, banks are willing to make adjustment. Of course, you know that it can cost you on the back end. But still, there are ways that you can go through to work through it. For the person who absolutely has no recourse but to go out there, land that survival job and go for it, understand that you are going to be, you're a walking time bomb, so to speak. And
I like to
it's
reframe the survival job to a bridge job because it's a bridge to wherever
whatever
you're
you go
going next.
next.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. And
So you were
that's
going to
fine.
go into your second point. Sorry for.
No, no, that's perfectly valid. I'm glad that you pulled that out because it's important for people to understand. Because this is what happens. Nothing is straightforward in this process. Absolutely nothing is black and white, you know? And so your emotions determine the quality of your life. This is a saying that's been around forever. I don't even know where it started originally, but it is something that I believe in. And for anybody out there who do not think that their emotions determine the quality of their life, they need to reflect on a time when somebody came through the door and was rude to them and the way they responded in that moment. Most of the time, you're acting purely on your emotions. And very often, it's not a response of, I don't understand why you are being rude to me right now. More often than not, many of us have a tendency to neglect that person. You know what? You're rude to me. I'm going to make you wait. You know, or you're rude to me. I'm going to be rude right back at you because I don't deserve this. I was here at 6 o'clock this morning waiting for you and you were late. Okay. Your lack of preparation is not my fault. So don't come in here and take it. So you get all of these kinds of reactions and it's purely emotional. Whereas if we had a moment to step back, if we had a moment of pause, we would respond more professionally. Well, it's the same thing. So when you've got your emotions driving you, and in the case of a loss, where for many people, losing their job is not just the employment, It's the friendships for many people that I've encountered. All of the friends they have. I mean, you're in a job for 25 years. You're probably working in the same building. Everybody knows your name. All of a sudden, you're in a community that you only ever spend sleep time in. So you know nobody. You don't know your neighbors, you know nobody, and you have to make that whole readjustment all over again. It is painful. Some of those people you were once working with, you may never see them again, you may never talk to them again. And sometimes that's okay. But very often, all of these things stimulate emotions that can be lasting. And so you want to be mindful of that. You have to manage those emotions very carefully as you transition. A third point that I want to make here, Michelle, is as you're managing those emotions and as you're preparing yourself to return to work or as you're accepting that bridge job, ask yourself, where do I want to work and what kind of environment do I want to work in? Where, in terms of location, environment could be what kind of industry. So you want to think about that, um, you know, before you move forward. You want to work through the challenges that are facing you before you start applying for other positions, or else
Carl,
you
why
can
is
end.
that question so important? Because some people might be like, well, I'm willing to take what's available to me. Going back to the previous question I asked, if you've ever gotten pushback about patience, being that, okay, this thing is available to me. Well, it's something that I can apply for. My qualifications fit, but it's not ideal in terms of location, or it's not ideal in terms of what's being offered for benefits, or it's not ideal in terms of the pay. But again, my bills are disrespectful. They are impatient. My kids need to get fed. Roof needs to be over our head. Things are happening. Why is asking oneself this question so important when things might be pressing financially that require having an income?
I want to say that question, when you, the person in transition, have the awareness that, yeah, this is not ideal, but it'll have to do for now. I say, see that as a motivator. See it as a motivator. You know within yourself, you know what? This is going to be for a short time. I'm not going to do this one day longer than I have to. This for me is the perfect definition of a job. In other words, you know, job. Somebody once told me that the acronym is just over broke. Well, this is the ideal definition of a job. This is what you're going in to do to fit a specific situation in which you find yourself that you have to overcome. And so you're in that situation, you're going to do it, and you're going to burn the candle in three places so that you can get to your ideal position as fast as possible. I mean, amidst all the grief, amidst all the pain, amidst all the tears that comes with the loss that you're dealing with.
All right. Well, for expounding on that, you were going into a third point.
Well, no, I mentioned earlier, just working through the challenges, and if that survival job is one of the challenges that you have to work through, then make it happen as quickly as possible.
Okay. So let's talk about strategy and moving forward. How should people experiencing or a career transition reflect on their most recent role as a part of clarifying their future direction?
Knowing where you are, knowing where you're coming from is the first step, is setting the stage for where you want to go. And so as you're reflecting, you want to think about your skills, your abilities. These are the things you want to keep in mind. What proficiencies do you possess? Do you have skills that are relevant? Have you been staying up to date with your credentials? Because people in positions for long periods of time have a tendency to allow their credentials to lapse. Okay. And so have you been staying up to date with these things? And so as you're reflecting, Do you need to reskill? You know, do you need to upskill, upgrade those credentials? Do you need to take a higher level? What else do you need to learn about whatever job that you're targeting so that you can be effective in that role? But when all of that is going on, here you have the opportunity, because you're in transition, to answer one of the key questions. And if you don't ask yourself that question, rest assured that any career coach that you work with is going to ask you that question. Because remember, we're talking transitioning here. And so, what do I really want to at this stage of my career? That's the question, where if you don't ask yourself and start answering that question, your career coach is going to look at you and wait for you to respond. Because it is important that you are making your next move, your best move.
I love
That is,
that. Make
that
your
is,
next move your best move.
that is correct. And you have to be ready to do that. So you want to make sure you have the knowledge. You want to make sure that you have the proficiencies. And I'm not saying skills here. I'm not omitting skills. I'm just moving away from skills. We're talking about proficiency. Okay. Your best. And do you have the ability, mentally, physically, spiritually? Do you have the desire? Are you ready to go back into that environment and be successful? Because that's the bottom line. That's what the employer is going to expect from you. You know, the other thing you want to think about is, where do you want to do this? Perhaps you were driving 10, 15, 30 miles. Perhaps you were commuting 2, 3 hours a day. I've been there. I know what that is like. Okay? Because you're sitting in traffic this whole time. So where do you want to go? Which environment do you want to go in? We're in a time now, post COVID, where a lot of us got comfortable working remotely, working from home, sitting in our couches, sitting on our patios or our own private offices. You can stand, sit, do whatever you want. You can walk outside. Some of us are coming from that. What kind of environment do you see yourself in? So you want to think about all of those things in your reflection, because you want to make your next move your best move.
So,
Okay.
on that note, making your next move your best move. Let's say you've worked through all those reflection questions and you're ready to move forward. What are 5 key actions people in career transition can take when restarting their career plan with intention now that they've gone through all of that reflection?
Check to make sure that whatever credentials and skills and proficiencies that you may have are relevant. Relevancy is important. Okay. Your network, family, friends, former co-workers, and anybody else who comes into the picture. They are part of your preparation for that. All right. Perhaps it is time for you to go out and explore and catch up on industry knowledge. What kind of industry are you going into? Are you returning to the same industry, or are you switching industries? And so, what do you have to learn? What needs to change? And if it's the same industry, is it a different organization? And what is that organization's values? What do those look like? Do you know anybody within that organization? Do they have enough information on their website for you to check? Does glassdoor.com have a full review on them? you know so it's a time for research and catch up on industry knowledge trends. Are they located where you want to be? Do you need to relocate? Do you need to rehouse? Do you need to travel long distances, or are they flexible and are willing to work with you remotely, or hybrid? You want to think about all of these things. And then we talked about this earlier, we can't say it enough, the importance of reskilling and upskilling. These are things you want to talk about. I've gone past 5, haven't I? Um,
I don't
I
think
would,
anyone ever complains about getting more than what they thought they were going to get, unless that more will harm them in some way. And I don't think this is one of those cases. So
yes.
we'll take the extra.
Okay, yes. And I will say this, people need to use their resources.
See
And
what
one of the big resources out there, and I may say this again before this conversation is over, one of the big resources out there is the American Job Center.
what are
They,
those?
the American Job Center is a source within pretty much every county across this country, every major county across this country, where you can go and get information about employment, about community services, and about training. Sometimes they've got funding that will pay for the training that you need because they get funding, whether from private or public sources, that they can use to help you to reskill or upskill. They have these programs. And so find the nearest American Job Center to you, walk in, have a conversation with somebody. They can help you with your resume writing, they can help you with identifying jobs, they will even help you with your job search. So they are another essential piece of your network, and people need to utilize them. So there's my plug for the American Job Centers. It's a
I
great
love that.
place.
Thank you for sharing that bit of info. So I also know that a part of getting ready for a career transition is mindset and how we think, because sometimes we can talk ourselves out of doing things that we should be doing. So, how should people in career transition reframe negative self talk to avoid certain mindset traps? And what are some of the common mindset traps to avoid? And how would you coach a client to reframe these mindset traps? For example, if a client says, I am behind, how would you coach them in a reframe?
I am behind. That's it. That's I am behind. And it depends to be behind on what, because behind sometimes it's not all bad, you know? But if somebody is behind, could be they're late for processing their documents, they're behind, the application is due at 11:59 and it's 10 o'clock, then you've got 1 hour and 58 minutes to get it submitted. And so it's not that I am behind anymore. It is, I need to get this done. I need to focus and get this done.
What if it's the case where I am behind in my career, behind where I should be, behind in the level of income I should be making, behind in where I should be in my career for my age or for as long as I've been in this career? What if it's one of those types of questions?
If I may say one thing, I stay away from age. I talk about stages, but it is important that at whatever stage you find yourself in your career, if you think that you have not accomplished what you set out to at that time, reassessing is important. But this is not one of those times where you're going to look back and wallow. This is one of the times when you're going to take action. And if you're behind and it's getting up on the 11th hour, you wanted to retire at 66 and you're now 65 and a half, and it's the 11th hour, it may not happen. But if you're 62, there are some things that you might catch up on. And so it is, all right, I have all of this experience, I have all of this expertise. Uh, who can I talk to who's going to help me make these next 4 years valuable? And you can go from a financial advisor to assess your savings to the manager in your office or the HR professional who can reevaluate your skills and help you to reassess your worth. And so that's where you want to go with that. You're behind on that. It's about connecting with the people within your network, within your sphere, within your organization, who are going to help you to move to the next step. And then you are going to have to take the lead on all of this. And so you're going to start by coming up with a new plan. All right. And we talk about vision boards and all of that. And so go back to that age old question: where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you need to accomplish in the next 5 years? Well, what do I need to accomplish in the next 3 years so that my income level will be where I wanted it to be 20 years ago?
Carl,
It's a
I'm
big
glad
ask.
you mentioned getting a financial advisor or financial planner in relation to the question about if you feel as if you're behind on your income. And it's a good opportunity for me to plug the next episode that's coming up where we get into the financial aspect of career planning. So make sure that you are tuning in for the next episode because we will be talking about financial planning in a transition.
And thank you for that plug, Michelle. I'll be sure to listen in on that one. Yeah,
Yes,
you were
you
going to
don't
say
want
something?
to miss it. So, one more question about reframing mindset. For those who are thinking, I have failed, how would you coach them into a reframe?
Why do you say you failed? And I would get that person to talk me through their experiences. And I would get them to say, okay, you did not become the executive director of your company, but you were the director of somebody else's company. So did you fail? Or do you now need to redirect your talent and skills and abilities that you gave to those people to your own self, to your own ambitions, and go after that? So now is the time. You spent time making it about everybody else. You spent time working for other people. Now it's time for you to step back and say, you know what? From this point forward, I'm going to make my life about me. It's about my goals. I'm going to go back to that original position, reflecting on the most recent role. Well, I'm going to go back there and build on that because now I have the experience, I have the know-how, I know how to wear everything. And honestly, Michelle, I believe that this is how many companies are built. People suddenly come to the realization in the midst of a transition, you know what? I was a manager in my position. I oversaw millions of dollars. I disbursed millions of dollars. I managed dozens of people. I prepared reports. I made all of these connections. I did all of this wheeling and dealing out there to drive a successful branch of an organization. I can do this for me. And so it is changing the conversation. It is switching the conversation from them to me. At this time in my career, this is what I will going. I am setting. This is the journey. This is the next step of my journey. The next step of my journey is me.
So, Carl, we talked about for why it's important for people who've experienced job loss, who are in career transition, to think more about designing their next career move and why that's more powerful than rushing into the next job. So, what are five, or it doesn't have to be five, however many you want, right? So we don't have to keep track and count. Some practical steps for career design.
Now, before we get to the number of actions, I like the word designing when it comes to career decision making, career planning, because when we're talking about design, design is all encompassing. Okay, you're beginning with a blank slate. Okay, all you have is what's here in your head. you have an idea, and you're going to take that idea and lay it out on a keyboard, a computer, a sheet of paper, however you choose to draw it, you're going to create it. And it's your image that's going to show up, your vision that's going to be there. But what you're going to do with that vision is you're going to share it with other people because you want to authenticate that. Yeah, this is your idea, it's great, but you're going to involve other people. And this is how the job search process works. When Jay Block talked about the job campaign, this is what he was talking about. He talked about, yeah, you have an idea, but now you're going to get others involved to help you to develop that idea so it becomes an even greater um, program, business entity, or so on. And so you have to take time to plan this. You have to plan it. You have your ideas, you turn your ideas into plans, you turn your plans into action. And that's when you make the design. And so one of the things you want to do is develop that story. It's your story, and you want to be the one to tell it. And you've told it to yourself many, many, many times. And so now you're going to be sharing it with everybody. You're going to be that kindergarten child all over again. You're going to tell that poem to every single person in your family until you know it by heart, because that's what it is. We learn by repetition. Okay. So you're going to tell that story. You're going to dive in and learn about the company or the industry that you're targeting. That's part of your design. Something that a lot of us don't think about, Michelle, when we think about the job search process is our worth. Because you have time now in this transition to sit down and design, think about what you're worth. And this brings me back to the previous question. You know, it's how much do I need to earn so I can have the lifestyle that I need, so I can continue to live in the community that I want to live in, so I can drive the car that I want to drive or not drive the car that I have outside, you know, um, so that my children can have the quality of life that I want them to have, get the quality of education they want to have, you know, so I can get paid the salary and benefits that I deserve, that I desire. Okay. You want to take the time as part of your design to craft that. And this is where you have to involve other people. So you find yourself a career coach. Okay. And you begin the process. You need to get skills. You get the skills, you reskill, you upskill. Okay. And if you need to shed some skills, then do that too. You know, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going back there. And they say never, but I'm not going back there. So you close that door and you move on. They say don't burn bridges, but quite honestly, some of them need to be put down. I have no problem with that. The other thing is be ready to negotiate. Learn as part of your design plan to negotiate salary, benefits, opportunities, work location, venue, even the space in the building that you sit. Learn to negotiate all of that. And network. It's all about building network. Your design plan has to be strong in networking and learn the art. There is a lot of information out there where you can learn to learn the art. So when you have time, take the time and do it right, because your next move needs to be your best move.
I think this is a great place to end on this very poignant point that your next move should be your best move. Carl, thank you so much for joining. And maybe I should have you back in your capacity as a resume optimization coach to talk about how people then prepare and optimize their resume once they're in their job search to make sure that they're getting the best. The resume is telling the complete story of them. Carl, any final words?
I just want to wish everyone listening to this podcast the best for success in their career search. Michelle, if you would permit me a plug here, I work in collaboration with Innovision Works, and Innovision Works is about coaching, about the Clifton strengths, about the crucial conversations, and we're looking at doing some events coming up in the fall as well. So it's Innovision Works, and perhaps check out the Innovision Works website and see what we're about.
Before we conclude, I would like to reiterate what I've heard Carl say into a 3R framework, which is the reflection piece, right? Making sure that you're reflecting on who you are, what you want, where you want to go. And then to reframe, shift your perspective, right? Instead of seeing this transition as a setback, looking at it as an opportunity for moving forward and pivoting and exploring where you want to go. And then to realign, identify tangible next steps that align with your goals and values so that your next move can be your best move. So, if you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode because your next move deserves a blueprint.